but I woke up one morning with like vision loss
Mm.
over here, and it just seemed weird. And I felt like, I just woke up and I was on my phone and I was like on my side. I thought maybe one of my eyes was adjusting to the light where the other one wasn't. Then as I got up and 10, 15 minutes passed, it didn't adjust. And I was like, and went to the eye doctor and he couldn't find anything wrong. So he said, you should probably go to the emergency room, just abundance of caution. And they did a scan of my brain and found out I had had a stroke, which is crazy to me because I really have been working out like 6 days a week since I'm like 10 years old. It just didn't make any sense.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. Today we're here with Dayle Dymkoski, who is a comedian, also personal fitness trainer, and was living the life and on his personalized training program, helping lots of people, only to have a stroke himself in his 40s and then be forced to change some of his protocols and some of his thinking altogether. Let's find out more. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
The taste of a banana would be like, it's a very neutral taste. I would say, like, if you could imagine vanilla in fruit form, with a tender texture. On the newer banana, the more ripened banana, as it gets older, it gets a little bit more moldier, but it's a pleasant taste. It's a very neutral taste. I would just liken it to a vanilla flavored fruit.
There you go, vanilla flavored fruit.
Yeah.
Would you say you're a vanilla kind of person?
I don't think so. I don't think I would say I'm a vanilla kind of person. I like the taste of many different things. I would say I have a fairly refined palate. I was raised by in a cooking family. My dad was a great cook, and my mom's side of the family is Italian. So I grew up really appreciating different tastes and textures.
So lots of family get-togethers around food.
Yeah, for sure. Food is definitely a big thing in my upbringing and in my life. Yeah.
Would you say your most significant memories are based around food events?
Sure. Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Like Thanksgivings every year. My dad makes the best Thanksgiving dinner that you could imagine. The gravy, the stuffing, the mashed potatoes. It's just every year it was like, and I never would, it's always kind of spoiled me in terms of as I gotten older and going to other people's gatherings, because it never quite measures up.
So you go over to their place and you just talk about how great your family's cooking is.
Yeah, well, I try to keep the, at a minimum, because you don't want to
do you eat before you go?
Others. Sometimes that's part of it. It's like, okay, I'll go, but let me make sure I have the essential staples that I can have that experience if it's not up to par.
So when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I guess it would be around the age of 6. And that's when it all runs kind of murky for me between the ages of 6 and 8, when my father left for California. I lived on the East Coast. I grew up in Connecticut, which right by New York. And my parents divorced before I could even remember them together. So I don't remember my dad and mom together, but he would come and take my brother and I every weekend. And then there was one weekend when he didn't come. And my mother said that he left for a while and we didn't know for how long. And he basically took off for 6 months. And 6 months to a 6-year-old is like an eternity. So I would say that was probably my first existential crisis, because my dad was really the one who nurtured me and loved me the most as a child.
And how was it a crisis for you?
Well, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. And the older I get, the more distance I have from it and more I can see it for sort of just how crazy it was. And because of that, how I'm going to have problems because of that, and so my mother didn't show me a lot of affection and love, and so my dad did. But it was at a part-time thing. He would see me on the weekends, and I would have the week, on the weeks before the weekend where I would see my dad. I was always waiting to want to see my dad. So when he didn't come that weekend, and then for 6 months after that, I guess I felt some sense of abandonment.
You definitely felt the loss of human physical contact.
Yeah.
Which, of course, after going through COVID, more people are awake to.
Yes. Don't you? I feel like the COVID experience has been like just a great reset for a lot of people. Like, it really stopped us in our tracks to sort of see how fast we're moving in our daily lives and how it maybe doesn't need to be like that. That's been my experience.
Agreed. Would you say that was it really an MIA situation, that you didn't actually know what had happened to him?
No, it's such a vague recollection. I do believe there's he went to California, but it was a very spontaneous act on his part with the woman that he went with. They just sort of decided on a Sunday night, let's drive to California. And so I knew that he went to California, but I didn't know how long he was going to be gone. He sent me and my brother postcards while he was gone. And I remember getting one from the Great Salt Lake. They drove across country, and he sent postcards, every step of the way. And then when he came back, he picked up right where we left off. But there was that 6-month gap that was like, whoa.
So did you ever have a chat with him about the gap was very, it was significant for you?
Yeah. We've talked about it.
And was that, so when you say we've, talked about it, how much older were you? 20 years later, 5 years later, when you were a teenager throwing, I don't know, tomato sauce at his face?
So it's very interesting. It's one of these things that I've just sort of realized in just the past couple of years, like how much of a thing that must have been for me. I didn't really, I blocked it out, and just recently sort of doing a lot of work, looking back, and so I can look ahead, sort of work, I realized that, wow, that must have been a big thing that I don't really quite remember a whole lot about. But, my most loving memories as a child were with my father on the weekends. And he was gone for a period of time, and it was just like, and then he came back, and then we picked up where he left off and went over there every weekend. And, but that interruption, I think, was probably not insignificant in my emotional development.
Right, because nowadays there's FaceTime, there's Zoom, there's Google Meet, there's, can we play Roblox with you at the same time?
Yeah.
Right, there's a big differences, right? But then there were not these opportunities.
Right. Yes.
So
yeah,
technology
has certainly changed how we're able to connect with other people. And
now, where would you say, from that was your next existential life crisis? Was it tied to him as well?
So my teens were hard. I remember just being I remember realizing not till very much later that I was a depressed teen, that once I got into after age 12 and more like 13, I started to feel very sad and very heavy emotionally, whereas to the age of 12 and under, I feel a lot more light about my experience. And I do attribute it to I just have depression that runs in my family, and been able to find ways to cope with that. And
Let's be specific, because lots of people have talked about this, but there's
Yeah.
a broad range of depression. For
Right.
you, how did it show up?
I would say that for me, I was a very functioning, low-grade, depressed person. So I found little joy in the things that I did, but I put so much pressure on myself to perform and to be good and to succeed, that I had very little joy in the process of doing those things that did bring me joy as a child from the ages of like 6 to 12, like I was saying, that I remember distinctly around the age of 13, where it started to like feel heavy, and I felt, this sort of just overriding sense of gloom that once I got into my 20s and sought professional help, that I realized, oh wow, this is a real thing, and it
Right.
took
Did
many
you
years working
explode
through it.
it and think that, or was there conversation in the family that, oh, Dale's going through one of his
No,
episodes?
no, that's just it, because everybody else had their own things that and I kept it together in a very functional way, that everybody sort of overlooked the fact that I might have had problems and that needed help. I was highly functioning, very good in school, good kid, good athlete, and it kind of really crashed for me in my mid-20s, when after I graduated college, after I moved to New York City, and I began working as a personal trainer and training people. And I don't bring that up to say that triggered my depressive episodes, but it's where I was in that point in my life, and I was beginning to get to know all different kinds of people from all different walks of life. And I remember, and I loved the work, I was really good at it. And I remember coming home on a Friday after working a solid week, really a nice fun week of work, and just not being able to like do anything the whole weekend but cry, and that's when I realized, oh, something's not right. Something's not right. And that began the process of me seeking professional help, where I've been lucky to have some really great therapists and helpers to help me sort of find a better path.
And what have you found that helps you with depression?
Definitely exercise every day. Like, that just has to be done, and not every day. Like, maybe it's 5 days one week or 6 days one week, and maybe it's not an hour each time, maybe it's 30 minutes to 40 minutes, but some amount of time that I take to focus on the needs of my physical body is just tantamount, just the number one thing. And I learned to play music in my 30s, which is kind of late in life. And that's become another thing too. That's been really, really helpful for me, because it just accesses a different part of the brain, which I know. And it just helped. It was sort of awakened a part of the brain that had been dormant for me for many years. And it was really hungering for activity, I think, because once I started playing music, it just evoked a whole different, inner life for me, and creatively and socially and sort of everything.
And what was the next perception shift you had?
But there's been so many. So I could maybe.
First one, your intuition.
Yeah, so I had a stroke a couple of years ago. I'm 49 now. I was 47.
And you look like you're 38.
Yeah, thank you. I'm often told I look a lot younger. It's the exercise. And yeah, so it just seemed the furthest thing possible that could be happening to me was that I was having a stroke. But I woke up one morning with like vision loss
Mm.
over here, and it just seemed weird. And I felt like, I just woke up and I was on my phone and I was like on my side. I thought maybe one of my eyes was adjusting to the light where the other one wasn't. And then as I got up and 10, 15 minutes passed, it didn't adjust. And I was like, and went to the eye doctor and he couldn't find anything wrong. So he said, you should probably go to the emergency room, just abundance of caution. And they did a scan of my brain and found out I had had a stroke, which is crazy to me because I really have been working out like 6 days a week since I'm like 10 years old. It just didn't make any sense. And there was a recovery that went along with that and some changes in my sort of physical makeup that I've had to contend with. And it's really shifted my perspective in a lot of things. Like, I don't want to waste a minute doing anything I don't want to do anymore. Like, it's just.
So you've had a rejuvenation, a revitalization of what life is as a result.
No question.
What would you say is the biggest change in your behavior since that happened?
I don't work as hard. I
think that through COVID, a lot of people have been the same. They're not working for the corporations anymore. What am I working for? To retire and maybe die beforehand anyway?
Yeah, like I was working so hard physically that I was just so exhausted that it began to not make sense. And I was like, and COVID, I'm one of those people that had a positive experience with things stopping and being able to sort of reevaluate. And it just made me realize just my body didn't want to do that anymore. It needed to sleep in.
The stroke was before COVID.
The stroke was right before COVID.
Okay.
Yes. It was like months before. And so I was out of work for a couple of months. I went back to work for about 6 weeks before everything shut down. And my going back to work was very difficult.
Now, what was required that was difficult?
So fitness training at an Equinox, a local gym, high-end type gym. So, you're picking things up, you're motivating people, you're engaging people, you're setting things up. There's a lot of brain work that goes on. And there's also a lot of just physical work of lifting heavy things, and also being in a gym environment, there's a lot of auditory cues, a lot of noise, a lot of lights that aren't. So yeah, I became very aware of those other senses that I never really gave it that much thought, that I was being so bombarded, my senses were, and how tiring that can be to the human body, and now I started sleeping in again. So I wound up adding, an hour and a half to 2 hours sleep per night, and my body just loved it. And I was like, there's no way I can not do this anymore. This is what my body needs.
So you are still doing body training, but with a different viewpoint.
Yeah, it's definitely altered my viewpoint as far as conditioning is concerned, and working out and exercise for sure.
And what do you do now to help keep yourself centered? And there's so much noise, so much social media blasting. There's always noise going on. What do you do now?
Yeah, the three things I start my day when I'm like on point. I always call it. I was like, when my day is just like I'm on, I'll sit in my chair and just close my eyes and breathe and meditate for about 15 minutes.
We like the meditation part very much so.
It's something I have done at various phases in my life, more times than others. And I just read a really interesting article recently in the New York Times about how, meditation can be, obviously not saying anything you don't know, and you probably haven't heard it said a million times, but meditation can be brought into any kind of physical activity, be it exercise, working out, and that connection to the breath and being present, taking it into working out is very helpful, so it's just, so starting the day that way, reconnecting with that through exercise and music and writing my feelings. I have these like I call them like coping mechanisms. They're just tools I have that to put that energy out into a positive place.
There are so many different types of meditation, and the word meditation, it does come from the Latin, and who was writing Latin? The monks, right? And their idea was to focus on the word of Christ. And so it does mean to think on, but there's basically two parts of meditation. There's the concentration part and then the non-directive. And the concentration part uses sort of different parts of the brain. And in 2014, the University of Sydney and Oslo, and it's published in PubMed, they simply put people under an MRI of what they were doing, various types. And of course, the concentration practice, like you're referring to, lit up that centered part of the brain, right? We're going to focus. Okay?
Yeah.
The surprise they had were practices that are non-directive, which are based on simply letting go, a letting go practice. They were surprised it not only lit up more of the brain, equanimity, left and right, but it activated areas that release stress, which releases emotions and helps release thoughts, right? Thoughts and emotions, but also processing deep rest. And this was most of all the studies that come out, I'll be honest with you, they're always published by people who have an agenda that they want to prove that particular lineage. I mean, if we have not learned anything through COVID and what's happened in the last 4 to 6 years, we really have to discern, where is this source coming for? And it can take a while to go down and figure that out, right? But if someone doesn't have discernment, right, this is discernment, you know, our meditation practice is a letting go practice. So we wouldn't want to do that at the gym because we sit very comfortably, easily and effortlessly, we just close our eyes and we sort of allow everything to go inward with the help of a sound, not a word, but a sound. Because if it was a word, that would have meaning and that would bring us back up to a level of the brain to concentrate on what does this mean?
Yeah, right.
And if you're curious about what that is, you'll see here, there's a little image of an ebook, Vedic Meditation Stories, which is the only publication globally that has true stories from people who learned the practice and it changed their lives. People maybe like you, who, not you, but people who are listeners, who don't like the idea of meditation. They're going to run as far as the hills because there's an idea of what you're supposed to be. Like you were talking about, you're supposed to be a good boy, a good person. Check off these boxes. And a spiritual awakening or an awakening through COVID is, well, hang on. Apart from basic provision, which people who thought they may have had that set went through savings, right? People lost houses, right? Where do we find that comfort and joy? Because it's too stressful to be stressed all the time.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with stress? Stress will reduce the lifespan, let alone your joy, right, in each moment. So you can find out about that there at that ebook or at the website, awaremeditation.com. And we do hope you like and subscribe to the channel to help support the nonprofit. And all the info about that is down below as well. And so how did your family, apart from being grateful that you were alive, they probably, and I'm making assumptions, were glad that you were alive, you were okay, and whatever you need to do for your health is your health. Have they changed any of their perceptions based on your demonstration of what occurred and how you changed?
No.
There's no hope for humanity.
I'm hopeful, but the only thing I can have control and autonomy over is myself, and I don't see other people in my sphere. That's just my experience. That, you know, I wish it had like a happier ending, but it doesn't.
Well, the reality is, and so much in many of the worldviews is in the meditation world, is that people only learn through their own mistakes and their own experiences, which is why here on Cosmic Chats, you share your own experience.
Yeah.
We are not yet at an enlightened state where as a collective, we can watch someone else's experience and learn something from our own behavior, change that internally within us and grow.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm amazed at like the shift that has been happening for me in the past several months. And it has to do around, you know, letting go of certain relationships or that cause stress and strife. And for me, that happens to be with people that I'm related to, and that's okay. You know, that's part of life. And I think that part of going through life is just finding where vibrationally I'm supported and not feeling negative emotions surrounding that. So
well,
I've had
it's reciprocity with flow, right? So say
yes.
there is a discussion or an argument and two people have completely differing opinions based on both of their individual experiences. If there is not a meeting place of the minds of, I respect what you've been through, I get it, you respect me, there is no reciprocity of flow, nothing can continue to move forward. And
Yes.
this is what we're finding globally. There is more and more, this is my fence here, and I will look at you from afar, and that's it. We are actually doing the opposite of what we have created now through technology, through innovation to connect more. And you said something and I've forgotten what it was, but you were talking about having that soul connectivity and it is all vibration. That's why in meditation, it's a sound, right? You know, we start with if you wish to believe it, who you're listening to, a big bang sound, or you start with the inhalation of the child, and then there's an exhalation, which is usually very loud. For reasons, right? That's sound. It's sound, right? So that energetic flow, and it's not hocus pocus, it's completely science, has to be reciprocated.
Yeah. And I'm very intrigued at the language that you use, because I know sometimes in these talks, you know, that can come up against like, you know, spiritual words or new age type words, but at the end of the day, it's science and it's vibrational and it's studied.
Right.
The more you can sort of diminish stress. That's the work that I do in, you know, fitness. It's not dissimilar, because you want to be able to lower the stressors that are happening inside the body to effectuate change. So I appreciate just the language that you're using surrounding meditation. It's great.
Yes. Well, if you want to find more about that, and this for the listeners too, you can go look at the website where the blog is. There's some interesting articles that have been written, including that, which many New Age people have taken on, that Einstein never said a lot of the quotes that they talked about. And I think they say vibration is everything. He said E equals MC squared, and energy comes from a movement which has a vibrational context. So even though something is founded in pure science, it can get distorted, right? But can we discern the truth of what he was actually placing? And then from a meditation point of view, how is it that he could cognize these theories, and years later only science was able to prove it right, because it did not have the capacity? What is that? That is being able to go inside and listening and being able to be a channel for intelligence, right? And he's not the only person that's ever done that.
Yeah.
And what would you say, you know, if you looked back right before you had this stroke, was it completely out of the blue now?
Interesting, because there's 3 years there where I was working physically, just like an almost inhumane amount. Like people around me were just like, wow, it's kind of crazy what you're doing, the amount of work, up early all week, you know, all day. So it almost feels like kind of like you hear that story of the, you know, that 50-year-old CEO that had a stroke because he's like so high energy, so like working hard all the time, and in a different capacity, in a very physical capacity, but I was working that hard, you know. So you may be onto something there, that there was a sort of a confluence of factors that may have, and I'm grateful now because I've been able to sort of pivot into, and change the quality of my life as a result.
Beautiful. Well, if you want to know more about Dayle, all of his links and info are going to be in the description. In the meantime, we highly encourage you to check out the ebook, go to the website, check out what other offerings that we have available. And we'd like to thank you for tuning in to another Cosmic Chat.